If you haven't seen the last video that I uploaded on my channel titled Natsumi Kogawa, you have to watch it because this is not going to make any sense at all. This video is a sort of sequel, a sort of part 2 to that other video, so you have to watch it before you watch this one. I have 3 reasons for making this video. The first one is that someone who knew Natsumi reached out to me and they gave me some additional information as well as corrections on things that I had said in my first video. So I want to thank that person. I'm not going to say who it is and I'm not going to give their name to respect their privacy. That person said they wanted to speak out for her because she doesn't have a voice anymore. So I thank you for honoring her memory and I thank you for helping me put the truth out there. Another reason is that I read the transcript of the appeal, so I was able to gather additional information from that. So I'm going to be giving them in this video as well. And regarding my third reason, I think I should explain why I have a true crime channel and why I enjoy true crime. Of course, I have many reasons, and one of them being that I enjoy reading about the psychological aspect of things, especially when it comes to the killer. I like to know where they come from. I like to know their background, their history, their trauma, and what led to the events, to the killing or killings. And I should specify here that when I'm reporting what they say, it doesn't mean, I never mean that I agree with them, or I'm not trying to explain what they did or why they did it, or I'm not trying to take their side saying that they had traumas in their lives and that's what led them to killing. I actually say the exact opposite. I maybe not have been clear enough in the past, and it's actually as simple as this. If it was a reality that you have trauma in your life and that excuses the fact that you become a killer, nobody would be in prison. Everybody would be excused. I just want to clarify that I am well aware of reporting stuff that may sound like I'm citing for the killer or that I'm understanding of their situation or where they come from. That is not the case. And when I talk about what they say, like, when they're interrogated by police or what they say at trial, I'm not stating it as it's the truth, it's what happened. I'm just saying that it's what they say happened. And obviously you're in court and you're facing, possibly, death sentence if you're in the US, or if you're in a part of the world that has the death sentence, the death penalty, or, being in prison for the rest of your life. So anything that would help you, even if it's a lie, people would say it. And I believe that in this case, a lot of the things that William said were obviously not true. I think I was clear enough in the first video, but just in case I wasn't, I just wanted to put it back out there. The other reason I am interested in true crime, and that is more relevant to why I'm making this video, is that I hate injustice. I like the idea of, especially when you're talking about something as horrific as murder, I like the idea of knowing that the person responsible for the killing or killings is behind bars. And this is probably why I will never talk about unsolved cases. I don't think I have the heart to do that. I could never talk about someone who was killed, someone who died, and we don't know who did it. The few cases I have in mind that I heard of or that I've seen on TV or on Netflix or whatever, they bother me so much. And sometimes, I know you're gonna think I'm crazy, and I am, but sometimes when I hear about those unsolved cases, I think to myself, when I die, if I have the possibility, the opportunity to ask, I'm probably not gonna, worry about that when I die. But today, as a living person, I do worry about that. And I think to myself, when I die, if I am ever able to ask these questions, Jack the Ripper and other unsolved cases, if I have the opportunity to ask, who was it? Who did it? What exactly happened? I would, because that's how much I hate when justice isn't served. And more generally speaking, I am the kind of person who pursues the truth, no matter what it is. Like it's not only relevant to true crime, which is probably why I take so long doing my research and coming up with my notes, because I always have 1,000 questions in my head and I always get lost in research about the case I'm going to be talking about. But in general, I'm that kind of person. I'm curious. I like to know things. When I meet someone, I like to know everything about them. It's just the person I am. I try to understand the world that's around me. I try to understand myself as well. And the fact that I was given the opportunity to give additional information and also rectify some of the things I might have said that were not true, I will take it upon myself to make those clarifications and additions. And yeah, I'm glad I was given the opportunity. So let's get into it. I think the most important correction I have to make is that you should know that Nat and William were actually not friends. Natsumi was raised in a hippie community in northern Japan, and she was taught to be very polite, very kind, very caring, and very generous. So William, as I said, was used to hanging out in an area where she would, often walk by. He would ask passers-by for money. He would also ask them for, to pay him vodka. So Natsumi was actually just showing him respect. She was not his friend. You know how when sometimes in a certain neighborhood you have a homeless person who's often there, and if you're a nice person, maybe you talk to them and you get to sort of know them, maybe you know their name, and maybe you pay them lunch or dinner or a drink. And that's exactly what happened. She was just being nice to the homeless man, this homeless man that she saw on 3 different occasions, but they were absolutely not friends. As I said in the first video, Natsumi was an experienced traveler, so she knew how to behave around people, especially when she traveled. So don't go thinking that she was reckless in hanging out with this creep who offered drugs and she said yes. It was not the case. She was just being herself. She was being polite, as she had been taught, as she had been raised to be. She was generous with this homeless man she knew was homeless. She knew did not have a job. So that's just what it was. Something else that supports the fact that they were not friends is the fact that they did not communicate via text message or email or, through social media. That's what friends do. Real friends, they have each other's, social media accounts and phone numbers and emails, and they absolutely did not communicate, which supports that they were not friends. And remember I mentioned the email where they supposedly agreed on the sexual nature of their last encounter. That email doesn't exist. It was never found. Keep in mind that Natsumi is not only a very attractive young woman, but I like to say that when someone is nice, you can see it on their face, and I think Natsumi probably exuded, kindness and just generosity, and probably William saw that and he just targeted her. He begged her for money, and he was just asking everybody in that area for alcohol and money, and she was there and she was nice and generous, and she said yes to helping him out, not to dating him. So Natsumi is approached by this man who is homeless and in need of help, and she's helping him as a polite person, as someone who's polite and generous and who wants to do the right thing. But William was approaching her as someone who was attracted to her and who saw things as, romantic in his head, and it was just not the reality of things. One important piece of information that I found is that on the day of the murder, a social worker spotted William at the mall a few hours before he met up with Nat, and she said he was wired and he was talking very fast, like he had been smoking methamphetamines, which actually he had on that day. And if you don't know, methamphetamine is a sexual stimulant, so that does support the premeditation of the sexual assault, and it does show that William was expecting sex that day. When he says, during the trial and when he's interviewed by police, when he says that things went heated and then they went very wrong, it's not only because Natsumi refused to go to the park with him, but as I said in the first video, it's also because he was very frustrated that she was not staying with him in the tent, because she told him that eventually she had to go to her job interview. Remember, she had a job interview on that day, and he was also frustrated by the fact that she had to leave. I did find out about the charge for indignity to a human body. So remember I said that I wasn't sure if it was because of the piece of cloth being placed inside her anus, or if it was because the body had been dumped naked in a suitcase on the Gabriella Mansion property. It is because of the body being dumped on the Gabriella Mansion. So yeah, I got clarifications on that. Something else that I need to clarify as well is that when William went to Vernon after the murder, he actually didn't stay with his father. I think I read it in an article that he was staying with his dad. He definitely did go see his dad, but he was not staying with him. As you can see in the picture, this is where he was camping. This is also where he met his brother Warren. That's where he tried to commit suicide after his the picture of him and Nat came to light and everybody was looking for him. When the two brothers met, they went to see their father together, and when they got there, Warren told his father, "You should hug your son because this is probably the last time you're going to be seeing him." And FYI, this is also where William was arrested. You remember on the first video I said that William claimed that on their first date, which was actually just their first encounter, and when they, got to talk together for the first time, he said that it was a date. And of course it was not. And I've said it like 10 times, but I want to say it again. And he said that she played the ukulele for him. She did not. She didn't know how to play yet. She was still learning. She didn't even have her instrument with her when she met with him. So maybe they spoke about it. Maybe that's how he knew to, to mention the ukulele. Maybe he was hoping to make his story more believable and more romantic. He probably knew that she was playing, maybe because she told him, but it's definitely not because she played for him on their first date, because this is not how it happened. Okay, now let's talk about the additional information. Remember, I also did mention that it was more than one person who called the police to report her missing. So it was her friend who was supposed to go with her on the day of the murder to the Japanese restaurant where she was gonna apply for a job, and it was also her boyfriend. So over that weekend, so she disappeared on a Thursday, and that weekend her boyfriend did not have any news from her. He contacted her family, and then on Monday he also called the police to report her missing. So as I said in the first video, there were drugs involved. William claimed that it was Natsumi who brought the drugs with her, which is so inconsistent with her personality. And in fact, one of the drugs that was found in Natsumi's system had been prescribed to William. It was lorazepam. It was the anti-anxiety med. I did say in the first video that Natsumi had not been prescribed lorazepam, and the other one, which was a sleeping pill, but William had been prescribed one of them. Regarding the DNA evidence, I'm not sure I was clear about this one. There was no DNA evidence supporting the asphyxiation, or that even found the cause of death, that could determine the cause of death. It doesn't mean that there wasn't any, it's simply that maggots had eaten through most of her skin and most of her insides, so that's why the cause of death could not be determined. It's not that there was no DNA evidence, it's that it was eaten by maggots, most likely. They probably tried to, look under her fingernails for, maybe skin residue or blood residue, which is where it would be found if the victim tried to defend herself, but the nails had fallen off. And they also tried to look, inside the vagina for semen, but again, they couldn't find anything because of the state of decomposition. One of the things that a pathologist will look for in a case of asphyxiation is broken blood vessels around the face area and in the eyes, but she had no eyes. They had been eaten by maggots. So again, it's not that the evidence was not there, it's that it was probably washed away by, decomposition. The pathologist did say, that's what I've read from the appeal transcript, but the pathologist did say that it is hard anyway to find proof of a cause of death that is by asphyxiation or suffocation. When I mentioned the cat being set on fire, that incident was actually reported by neighbors of William when he was young, when he was, I think, a teenager. I also read this article with more information on William's past, including the cat incident, and it did mention, a series of burglaries that happened between 1997 and 1998, which he was responsible for, obviously, and they all happened at businesses that were owned by either Japanese people or Canadians from Japanese descent. So he was targeting them not only for his burglaries, but also women. And because of all the troubles that he had with the law, he had quite a few psych evaluations. In one of them, he said that the way he targeted Asian women or Japanese women is because they're easier to control, whatever that means. Another thing that surfaced from William's past is that he was actually arrested in 1992 when he came back from Thailand because he tried to smuggle drugs. For some reason, the Crown was not able to convict him. They were not successful in convicting him, but this thing happened. So just another thing to add to the list of his very long list of, the criminal record that he has. Remember when I told you about the piece of cloth being found in the anus? The question is, why did he do that? My theory was that he was trying to prevent, bodily fluids and organic matter from leaking so the body wouldn't smell and it wouldn't be found. I was actually wrong on that one. It was just a theory anyway, but I want to specify that I know the reason now. What happened was William went back to the murder scene and he went with the suitcase, and that's when he put her in the suitcase. So it was on September the 10th. And when he was moving her body, he knew that, organic matter could leak. So I think it started to leak. So he removed his t-shirt and he tore off a piece of it and he put it inside the victim's body. That's why when he went back to his hostel, he had changed his clothes because they were, not clean. There was a letter that William sent to his father where he said, when he was talking about the murder, he said it was not a premeditated thing, which is sort of a confession. He says he didn't mean to kill her, which is a confession. I did kill her, but I did not mean to do it. That's the only thing he could have been talking about. According to the trial transcript, the accusation believed that since he put so much effort into covering his tracks, the fact that he did try to kill himself and that he confessed, to his brother and also to his father in the letter, this all shows that he knew he had done something wrong, meaning killing her, not just the fact that he panicked and he disposed of her body because he thought police might think it's his fault, the fact that she died, and it does make a lot of sense to me. When this was mentioned, the defense argued that he felt guilty for disposing of her body and for making poor choices. The appeal was granted on February the 2nd, 2021, so about 2 weeks ago, just in case you wanted to know the exact day this happened, and the Crown intends to appeal the appeal, and I pray to God that they are successful, because he does deserve to be behind bars. I mean, think about all the things that he did in the past. William's release is actually due next week because it's the end of his sentence for the, indignity to a human body conviction. So, yeah. I want to give you more information as to the grounds on which the appeal was made because it was not just a phone conversation. I did mention it in details in the first video, so you're probably already familiar with that, and I'm not going to repeat myself. Ground number one was, the admissibility of the phone conversation overheard by Warren, William's brother. On this ground, the appeal was granted. But the other two, and I think I want to mention them because to me they sounded so absurd, but yeah, I'm going to tell you what the other two were. The second one was regarding the principle of concurrence, and was it indeed requested for the charge of murder? Now, what is the principle of concurrence? It's when you have both a guilty mental state, meaning intent, and a guilty act occurring at the same time. So basically, the defense says the judge should have informed the jury of the principle of concurrence, and only then could the jury have found the accused guilty of murder. But the Crown says that in this case, the principle of concurrence was not required simply because the principle of concurrence means multiple guilty acts. So for example, death by multiple stab wounds. But in this case, death was caused by one single act, the covering of the victim's nose and mouth, which blocked her ability to breathe. So that was ground number two. And number three was, did the judge mishandle a question that was asked by the jury? And the question in question was, can you expand, so this is the jury asking the judge, can you expand the definition of bodily harm in question 3, which is another question that was asked at trial, versus bodily harm as referred to in another paragraph? In case you want to know, the definition of bodily harm is any hurt or injury that interferes with a person's health or comfort and is more than just brief or of minor nature. Now, this is a legal definition in the criminal code, and the judge answered that the first occurrence in question 3 and the second occurrence in paragraph 119, bodily harm is bodily harm. It's the exact same definition. Now, what the defense was saying was that the first occurrence of bodily harm in question number 3 was, bodily harm in murder, and the other occurrence of bodily harm was in manslaughter. The defense was arguing basically that the jury was really asking for clarifications on the difference between murder and manslaughter, and they were not. They did ask, bodily harm, what does it mean? Is it different from, this first occurrence and the second occurrence? And it was not. So the judge did not make a mistake when she answered, I think it was a woman, when she answered bodily harm is bodily harm. It's the exact same definition, and she gave the definition again to clarify things. But yeah, the defense just pretended that, I don't know, they try to make it sound like the jury was stupid and they did not know how to phrase their question, or the judge should have asked for clarification on the question because it was ambiguous, and it was not. It was really not. These two are the grounds. To me, they sounded so ridiculous, even if, you keep in mind that they're the defense lawyers and they're trying to, help their client to either avoid prison or, have a lesser sentence. It still made no sense to me. But anyway, that's what happened. I think that's why I'm not too worried about a new trial, if there is a new trial, but I really hope there isn't, and I hope this guy stays in prison for the rest of his life. That's pretty much what I had to say about this case, and yeah, I hope I was clear enough. If I wasn't, please leave a comment. I will gladly answer all your questions, and yeah, I'll see you soon.